This is the first visit to America, to United States by Prime Minister Modi under Trump's second tenure. PM Modi is among the first few leaders to visit United States for a meeting with President Trump, which in a sense is an important meeting looking at the global backdrop. So what we should expect in terms of agenda, in terms of bilateral talks, in terms of negotiation, in terms of some extension of warmth from both the sides. For that, let's go to Madhav, my colleague from Times Now. He is in the United States covering the Prime Minister's visit.
There's no doubt about the fact that both these leaders coming together is very significant. They're both leaders who are known for their plain speak and for trying to walk the talk in terms of what they actually speak about. That's, of course, as far as the positioning of these two leaders is concerned. But yes, tomorrow a very, very important meeting as the Prime Minister arrived, of course, in Washington, D.C. He's staying at the Blair House, which is very, very close to the White House. And in fact, members of the Indian diaspora, of course, gathered there to meet him, several of them waiting several hours, braving the cold over here, the sub-zero temperatures in Washington, D.C., and also the fact that it was raining at that point of time when the Prime Minister entered. But of course, they were very excited to meet, and some of them managing to interact with the Prime Minister as well. So for them, it was a huge day indeed. Now, coming down to the bilateral itself, it's expected to take place in the second half. Tomorrow is what we are giving to understand. We also know that there's likely to be a dinner that is going to be hosted for Prime Minister Modi by President Trump. This is, of course, some of the information coming in as far as what is expected tomorrow. In terms of the business, of course, it's completely up to the two leaders. Various points that are being raised or have been raised in the past about concerns domestically, whether it's tariff, whether it's immigration, where the two countries will have to work things out. We'll have to see what's the best way forward in how they can take things forward as far as they are concerned. But the larger issues of strategic partnership between the two countries, defense cooperation, energy cooperation, all of these are also very important areas where the two countries have worked together and can work together as well. And so whether there's any announcement in that regard as far as these very important issues are concerned also remains to be seen.
India-US is really the partnership, of the next couple of decades, given the economic opportunity that India offers. For instance, investors, American investors, actually, for them to be able to earn more than 10%, returns in a year in dollar terms, not just in rupee, actually something that there are few other large countries that can provide such an opportunity. So from that perspective, I think, and President Trump is clearly, very, very focused on ensuring that, that the economy, the American economy does well. So in that perspective, I think there are clearly paths that converge. So I actually think that this visit would be one where there could be some important steps that could be announced.
Right. One of the things and areas of concern has been, the entire talk around tariffs. Now, one thing is about political rhetoric, but he's actually walked the talk when it comes to China, Canada, and Mexico. But again, Canada, Mexico is on hold for a month, is what we are told. How serious an issue do you think this is that is going to impact upon India?
So I think, from the Indian perspective, and, you would note that the Indian budget, the recent budget that was passed as well, took some important steps in this regard. I think the other aspect that actually, that needs to be focused on, when I think about overall trade between two countries, I don't focus just on one aspect of which is basically goods trade, and within that, tariffs actually. Ideally, the conversation needs to be, and especially from an Indian perspective, needs to be in the form of a 2x2 matrix where you have both goods and services and tariffs and non-tariff barriers as well. And there is some very good research that's been done by the WTO that shows that India, for instance, uses far less non-tariff barriers. And, that research shows as well that non-tariff barriers are more subjective and are oftentimes, far more opaque as well. So this is an aspect that I think India should be highlighting as well, because, some of these non-tariff barriers also affect the comparative advantage that India has, which is on the service sector side. So in my opinion, I think, this conversation actually would be far more beneficial if it is looked at it in a more holistic perspective, not just focused on goods trade and that too on tariffs, rather than that actually across this 2x2 matrix, all the four, so goods and services and tariff and non-tariffs as well. I think that is where there can be actually a lot of common ground in my opinion.
Right. Because one of the interesting things is that when you are speaking also against BRICS and imposing tariffs on BRICS, he was basically responding to a proposal about trying to de-dollarize, all this economic transactions. Is that something that is even practically possible in your view?
See, when one views, at this point in time, clearly dollar is the dominant currency, and at this point in time, on the horizon, one doesn't see any other currency that can actually take the place of the dollar. So I think the dominance of the dollar in international trade and also from international reserves is something that actually will continue.